Quitting your corporate job to travel is bullshit. I hated my job working 80 to 100 hours a week in investment banking, so I decided to quit that job and go travel the world. But things didn't exactly go the way that I thought they would. In fact, everything was kind of a disaster until I eventually found a new job. Back in banking, I once worked a full 25-hour day and had a mental breakdown in the shower. That was the moment that I realized I needed to quit that job. It took me a while, but a few months later, I finally did, packed up my entire apartment, which was in Hong Kong at the time, and left to go backpacking in South America. I thought that I was going to be happy, free, discovering myself, frolicking around Argentina and Brazil, but the reality was so far from that. Instead, I was anxious, lost, and confused, broke up with my then boyfriend who I was traveling with at the time, and ended up going back to a corporate job. Obviously, this was a few years ago, and I'm doing great now, but things were not so great then. And just in case this wasn't clear already, this is not going to be one of those I found myself in Bali videos because, first of all, I didn't go to Bali, and second of all, I've been to Bali twice, and there are way too many Instagrammers and tourists and traffic to do any kind of self-discovery these days. Instead, I want to tell you the full story of why I decided to quit my job to go travel, what I thought that traveling was going to fix, and what actually happened. So if you're feeling stuck in your job and tempted to escape, quit corporate America, go live on a beach somewhere, take dance classes, fall in love with a hot Brazilian, I get it. I am all for taking a break, doing things you're passionate about, and quitting a toxic job. But I also want to show you what happens when you take a break with no plans, because there is a smarter way to take a break, one that gives you clarity, not just chaos. So let's rewind. Once upon a time, investment banking was literally my dream job. I didn't get the job by way of an internship like most people do in college. I actually started my career in sales and trading and just became really obsessed with the idea of working in banking because I like the prestige and the exit opportunities. So I hustled really hard and moved to investment banking internally. And let me tell you, I grinded and networked my way to that job. When I finally got it, I truly felt that I had made it. For a few months, I rode this high. I was getting staffed on deals, learning fast, and honestly loved seeing investment banking analyst on my LinkedIn profile. Then, of course, reality hit. The Friday night staffings, the 3 a.m. comments, the millionth version of an already perfect deck, working 90 hours a week and still being on call on the weekends. I used to bring my phone to the club on the weekend, and sometimes my associate would actually email me. I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't growing, I wasn't happy. It got so bad that I used to write down every insane thing that happened in my job on my phone. And it was a long list. And that time I told you about when I worked 25 hours straight, it was for 25 hours to fix a pitch deck, not even for a deal. I did that only to get yelled at because a pie chart label was off by 1 digit. But even after that, I still stayed for several months because I kept saying to myself, I'll quit after this deal, I'll quit after I have a little bit more experience, I'll try to interview when I have time, line up a new job. But of course, I kept saying that to just delay things. I didn't have time to look for other jobs. I literally woke up every single day saying that I would quit, and the cycle repeated week after week. Eventually, after a few months, I figured that I couldn't keep pushing things. I was so miserable and unhealthy, so I quit with no job. The only plan that I had at the time was to move out of my apartment, which I shared with my then ex-boyfriend, and we would both go travel around South America for a few months to hell, maybe even a year while we figured things out. And I'm not gonna lie, the first few months after quitting my job, things were pretty good. We flew to Argentina, ate great food, slept in, wandered around new cities. It was amazing not to have the weight of a job over me. But way quicker than I thought, a lot of anxiety started popping up. I felt directionless, unmotivated, and apathetic. After doing a job that I felt so nonchalant about, I couldn't bring myself to be really interested in anything. I thought that travel was going to spark passions and interests within me that I didn't know about, but in reality, I was just going through the motions of doing things and not actually being interested. And I tried a lot of things. I tried to create travel content, started a blog, volunteered for a nonprofit of digital nomads, but I just honestly felt nothing. And I was scared that I would never be interested in anything again. And at the same time, I also felt so incompetent and feared that I was never going to be good at a job again because I didn't feel that I was good at investment banking. And I felt so checked out in finance. I was also lonely because even though I was with my ex at the time, my relationship was definitely falling apart. And it also made me realize that working in banking had eclipsed every other part of my life. I hadn't tried to build the relationship, and I only started seeing the problems outside of my job once my job wasn't the centerpiece of my life anymore. And I also started comparing myself to other people. I would scroll on LinkedIn even when I was traveling, and I would see people I used to work with in finance getting new jobs, friends in other industries starting MBA programs. Meanwhile, I had no income, no direction, and just no idea what I was doing with my life. So all in all, I ended up feeling super regretful that I had quit with basically no plan and no direction. Funny enough, what ended up helping me was the pandemic. I was in Argentina at the time, and when the pandemic hit, they closed their borders. So I ended up getting one of the last repatriation flights back to the US. And within a few months of quitting my job to go travel the world, I was stuck in my parents' house in the middle of nowhere and realized, wow, I really need to figure out what to do with my life. And when I first started to apply to jobs, I tried everything. I would apply to the most random jobs in the most random places. I took online courses about how to find my path, took career quizzes, cold emailed people with vague requests like, I would love to pick your brain. I know, cringe. And it felt like throwing things at the wall, hoping that something would stick. Of course, none of the things I did at the beginning worked because I was doing it with no direction of what I was solving for. Eventually, yes, clarity started to come, but not because I found myself. It was because I stopped waiting for the perfect plan or the perfect vision and just started testing things out once I got a little bit of initial clarity. And looking back, I think these are the three things that really helped me. Number one, I think I got initial clarity not by going around doing things and traveling, but honestly by sitting still and not being overstimulated by all the information out there. That gave me the ability to think about what I actually like doing with my time. And I realized that I like to write, I like to make things, I like to do things, I like to get shit done. I like to work with smart people who motivate me. The second thing was really having a mindset shift because I realized the reason I was so scared and anxious and lost was because I thought that whatever next thing I found to do in my life would have to be the be all end all, the thing that would make me happy until the end of time. And it wasn't until I shifted my mindset to saying, this is just the next thing, not the forever thing, that I even allowed myself to be interested in things again. That helped me to say, wow, my friend who's working at a startup, let me go talk to her, maybe see if I'm interested in that. Once I stopped thinking of the next thing as the be all end all, the pressure was gone and I could actually explore. And the last thing, once I had shifted my mindset, was also being a little bit opportunistic. To be honest, at the time, I didn't have the clearest sense of what I wanted to do next. So I just started reading the news, talking to people, and trying to understand what kinds of things were going on in the world. Of course, there was a lot of bad news on the economic outlook at the time. Lots of firms were doing layoffs. But because my mind was clearer, I could also look in the directions where that wasn't happening. And there were definitely industries that were hiring and growing. That ended up leading me to my next job, which was at a food delivery startup because food delivery was truly popping off during that time. Did I come in with a huge interest in food delivery or logistics? No, but I saw an opportunity and I found roles within that industry and the broader industry of tech where I would be able to do the things that I enjoyed, which I newly connected with, such as writing, building, doing things, and working with smart people. So looking back on my entire journey, quitting was truly not the mistake. Quitting without a plan was the mistake. What I really wish I did was take a strategic pause, one with structure and intention. So if you're in a similar boat, these are 5 steps that I would take to approach this. The first thing is to really time box your decision. Instead of saying vaguely, oh, I'm gonna quit, I'm gonna figure things out, you need to give yourself a deadline. Say, I am gonna quit my job in 3 months or 6 months. This is gonna prevent you from continuously saying, oh, I'm gonna quit, not taking action, and then getting anxious, and then panicking and quitting your job like I did. Step 2, now that you have a deadline in mind, you are going to take PTO to plan a strategic break. Yes, I know that in a lot of industries, it is really hard to take PTO, but even if you can take a day, you can do this in a day. A lot of people are going to tell you if you hate your job and don't know what you want to do next, you should build side hustles, freelance, or do side projects, or do other projects to figure out what you're interested in. I am not going to tell you that because I simply don't think it's realistic in most jobs, especially the ones that are really high pressure and toxic and where you hate it because you don't have any time. Instead, take PTO if you can, or even use a long weekend and make a plan around how you're going to approach quitting. And what I mean by this is, say you need 3 months off to rest and figure out what you want to do next. Okay, let's go plan out these 3 months. Maybe plan for the first month to be rest and recharge. You could spend a month working at a hostel, taking Spanish classes, living on a vineyard, just doing anything that's going to take you away from your current situation and give your mind a full break. And then maybe say to yourself, for the next 2 months, I am going to follow this plan to actually figure out what I'm going to do next and what direction I'm going in. I would literally write down how you're feeling now, what you're hoping to accomplish, either before you quit your job or during the time you plan to take a break, anything you know about what you're generally interested in, a vague direction you want to go in, and talk to ChatGPT ChatGPT. Ask it to work backwards and give you a plan to figure those things out and create a timeline. The third thing that I would do, and this is where I don't think ChatGPT is sufficient, is you need to talk to real people. Talk to people who are 1 to 2 steps ahead of where you are today. Maybe people who you used to know from the job. Conversations are going to give you clarity. Don't just go apply for random jobs because you might end up in a similar situation as you are now. And I honestly wish I had spent way more time talking to people, doing these informational interviews before I quit cold turkey and had no idea what I wanted to do. Number 4, try if you can to define a loose direction. You do not need a 5 to 10 year plan, but something like I want to explore roles at early stage startups, or I want to work in marketing. Even something as simple as that can help you start to test that hypothesis by, again, talking to people, reading about the industry, and figuring out, does that confirm my hypothesis or should I look in other directions? And eventually, if you realize that isn't the right direction, you can change course before actually committing. Even back when I was working in banking, I had done a lot of deals with tech companies. So I did have this inkling in my mind that I wanted to work in tech. I wanted to work at startups. So looking back, I wish I had gotten more clarity at the time by talking to people who had gone from banking to those paths, been more systematic about using my time off to explore those paths in addition to taking a break. And if you are interested in those paths like I was at the time and still am, I made a 18-page free guide on breaking into tech and startups where I brain dumped basically everything you need to know if you are new to the industry and considering a exit, especially from roles like finance and consulting. I am truly not gatekeeping here. This is information that I used to sell in a paid guide, but now I'm making it free because I want to democratize that information. Step 5, after you've planned, take the break. Even if you plan to take time off specifically to explore your next step, I would highly recommend also taking a little bit of time to fully decompress, fully rest, especially if you're in a toxic, high pressure job or just any job that you hate. There is a lot that your mind and body are going through every single day in that job, and you need time to disconnect from it, whether it's a week, a month, even 3 months if you feel that that is truly necessary. And this can look different for different people. Maybe you're going to do a yoga retreat. Maybe you're going to work at a hostel. Maybe you're just going to spend time visiting friends and family. So just to sum up, if you're dreaming of quitting your job to travel because you feel lost and burnt out, and you have one takeaway from this video, it's that taking a break isn't the problem, but doing it without intention is where things get messy. You do not need to blow up your life to find clarity. You need a little bit of inspiration and direction, a plan, people to learn from, and then you can give yourself permission to slow down strategically. If this resonated with you, I create content about building a more fulfilling career that's still high impact, especially if you want to work in tech and startups. So follow me for more.